Notwithstanding the official Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood's promise not to seek the presidency or any other position of power, Abdel Moneim Aboul Fotouh, 60, member of the Muslim Brotherhood's Shura Council and head of the Egyptian Doctors Union, has announced he would run for president in Egypt's upcoming election. He claimed he would be running as an independent, but no one doubts whom he represents. On April 29th, DEBKA file revealed that Fotouh was the Muslim Brotherhood's presidential candidate, the first publication to do so. Recently discovered by the American media, the contender is depicted as a progressive and moderate Muslim figure whose views on equal rights for women and non-Muslims should lay to rest Western fears of the Muslim Brotherhood as a radical movement. DEBKA files sources report that Fotouh's decision to stand for election has persuaded Egypt's military rulers to back off from running one of their own or a secular contender against him. The chairman of the Supreme Military Council, Field Marshal Mohammed Tanwani, and his fellow 25 members are inclined to wind up their traditional tenure by organizing orderly elections to Parliament and the Presidency in the coming months, handing over the reins of government, quitting politics, and returning to their military duties. This is bad news for Israel, which has maintained amicable ties with Egypt's military and intelligence authorities for many years, in contrast to the hostility it has encountered in Cairo's political and religious circles. The Muslim Brotherhood was encouraged in its power bid by the March 19th referendum on constitutional changes held after Hosni Mubarak's fall. More than 14 million Egyptians, 77% of its participants, favored the Brotherhood's demand for changes against only 4 million, or 23% of the vote, who did not. The yes voters proved to represent a large portion of members of the Muslim Brotherhood and allied Islamic parties. Its leaders were convinced that a moderate candidate for president would draw even more substantial support. The Liberal and Democratic parties, which led the Tahrir Square movement against Mubarak, were shocked when test runs by the public opinion experts they hired confirmed this finding. They were forced to accept that full democracy in Egypt would raise the Muslims to the center of power, with a majority in parliament and a better than good chance of winning the presidency and virtually eclipsing them as a force in Egyptian politics. When the U.S. administration was warned of the dangers of the Muslim Brotherhood, Secretary Clinton's response was, "They are only a 30% minority." The problem is that throughout the Middle East, the governments are usually controlled by the minority, not the majority. By the way, Hitler came to power in Germany in January of 1933 with only 30% of the German Democratic vote. Khomeini in Iran came to power in 1979, leading a wall-to-wall coalition of democratic forces, but in the end it was his fanatic group of fundamentalist Shiites that eliminated all the other groups, leaving only Khomeini's group in power. So today, the Egyptian army, in partnership with the Muslim Brotherhood, are now the ruling forces. And there should be no doubt that the agenda in Egypt has never been for democracy, nor is it now. On the contrary, the Islamic motto is, "We'll kill the Jews on Saturday, and we kill the Christians on Sunday." Now that there are no more Jews in Egypt, Saturday people, the Muslims say, "We will go for the Sunday people, the Christians." We already have seen how the Sunni Shiite struggle in Iraq killed Christians and forced them to flee to Syria. Now this is about to happen in Syria and by extension in Lebanon. Unfortunately, the Christian world in the West is silent about this, as are most of the churches and denominational leadership. No one in the Christian world is saying or doing anything about the slaughter of Christians in Africa. and of course as the fundamentalist Muslim Brotherhood takes over in Egypt and Syria, as it already has in Turkey and Gaza. I believe we are witnessing the creation of a Sunni caliphate that will soon be surrounding Israel as well. Could this be a Gog and Magog scenario in the making? Will the world do anything about the Christians of Egypt and Syria? Will the world do anything to stand by Israel at that time? It is time for the Jews and Christians to awaken and unite in alliance for the defense of Christians, Jews, and all of Western civilization threatened by this rising tide of Sunni Muslim Brotherhood fundamentalism. In other developments, a Palestinian teen died Saturday after being shot and wounded near a Jewish settler enclave in East Jerusalem, a hospital official and a local activist said, as new clashes ahead of Palestinian commemoration of their uprooting more than 6 decades ago. The clashes raised concerns of increased violence on the eve of the annual Palestinian Day of Mourning over Israel's founding, which is marked by protests, marches across the West Bank and Gaza. The Palestinians called the May 15, 1948 creation of Israel the Nakba, Arabic for catastrophe. Also Friday, Israeli troops fired tear gas at stone throwers in the West Bank village of Nabi Sela, an Israeli army spokesman said. A 25-year-old American demonstrator was hit in the head by a tear gas canister, said Jonathan Pollock, an Israeli activist. The Israeli army spokesman could not confirm the source of the injury. Palestinians also planned marches in East Jerusalem on Sunday to mark the Nakba. Ben Ruby said police were increasing their presence in East Jerusalem in anticipation of possible violence. This just in, President Barack Obama will lay out a vision for his policy toward the Middle East on Thursday, using Osama bin Laden's death as a chance to recast the U.S. response to political upheaval in the Arab world. Obama, who has enjoyed a boost in his standing at home and abroad with the death of the al-Qaeda chief, will give his much-anticipated Arab Spring speech one day before White House talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. This is Terry Malone with the Calvary Prophecy Report.